My name is Sarah Biegelsen, and I am introducing Charlie Chaplin's 1918 film, The Bond, as well as providing some historic context to it. The Great War had been surging for over 4 years, and the United States had only been a participant since April of 1917. While European countries overwhelmingly halted film production as battlefields engulfed the landscape, Hollywood had taken off and solidified that it would be the dominant creative force for cinema from now on. War commenced months after Charlie Chaplin had begun starring in films for Keystone Studios. Throughout the duration of the war, Chaplin honed his talents and fast became a recognizable face on the screen. He and other movie stars of his era had erupted on a global scale, even though war raged over there. Politically, America had remained neutral towards war and had little desire to fight. After major German aggression towards Americans became hard to ignore, America joined and helped turn the tide of the war in the Allies' favor. On the home front, it was crucial for civilians to buy Liberty bonds in order to aid the war effort. A new strategy was put in place for movie stars such as Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, Marie Dressler, and Charlie Chaplin to utilize their celebrity statuses in order to publicly support the war effort and sell Liberty bonds. Chaplin would later remark that he had never given a public address before, but as the Liberty Loan Tour demanded it, he found his first political voice. Though never a soldier, Chaplin would instead say at the time, quote, "I only wish that I could join the English army and fight for my mother country. But I have received so many letters from soldiers at the front, as well as civilians, asking me to continue making pictures, that I have come to the conclusion that my work lies here in Los Angeles. At the same time, if any country thinks it needs me in the trenches more than soldiers need my pictures, I am ready to go." Though Chaplin's more recognizable film set during the First World War is Shoulder Arms, The Bond is a compelling short on its own. It is pure propaganda at its finest, using varying symbolism to extol the reasons for American patriotism during the Great War. A notable artistic choice is all the scenes have a black background with minimal sets and props, a style that Chaplin never really replicated in any of his other films. This is reminiscent of German Expressionism becoming the leading film style in Germany in the 1910s and throughout the 1920s and early 1930s. The simplicity of the mise-en-scène instead evokes the nationalistic message presented. While there are many bonds worth preserving, as this film suggests, the Liberty Bond leads to American victory and therefore German defeat. The first half shows preserving bonds such as friendship and marriage and comes across as any other typical Chaplin film of the time. Halfway through the 10-minute film, the Liberty Bond sequence begins and shows how donations of the bare minimum could go a long way in supporting soldiers and vanquishing the enemy. This is done by depicting Kaiser Wilhelm II, played by Chaplin's own brother Sidney, as the symbol for Germany being beaten by a giant mallet with Liberty Bond emblazoned across it. Unlike other films of the era, the Kaiser isn't depicted with dramatics and perhaps racist otherness undertones. He's still the villain, but he doesn't loom over the other characters in a frightening manner. As Chaplin does in all his films, the villain is seen as much of a fool and worthy of being beaten up. The tramp is able to hammer the mallet and his point effectively while still promoting the blatant pro-American bias. One has to wonder if Chaplin's portrayal of the Kaiser in The Bond and also Shoulder Arms would spark his penchant for depicting real-life dictators in a comedic fashion, as he did later in his film The Great Dictator. The Bond was released a month before Shoulder Arms and in turn only 2 months before the armistice, which ended the war. Chaplin made this film at his own cost, yet gave all the film's proceeds to the Liberty Loan Committee. Critics of the era disapproved of Chaplin not serving in the military during the war. While Chaplin may not have physically fought in the war, his global influence had a lasting impact and perhaps provided more support than serving on the war front. It is my pleasure to introduce The Bond, and I hope my presentation provokes better understanding and appreciation for it. Thank you.